With our spaceship movement complete, let's add our spaceship laser firing functionality. In the link in the description, you'll find the link to freely download the assets and scripts or macro we created in this video. Feel free to download them and follow along, dissect the macro, or to simply use the completed effect in your game or project. If we look into our sprite folder, we'll find we have several different sprites designed for the different laser firing types and power-ups. However, in this video, we'll simply be demonstrating how to create and use our basic laser blast and laser stream. So let's start by adding our laser blast sprite into our scene, and then let's scale it to match the size it would be if fired from our ship. Let's also place it on layer 19, which is one layer below our spaceship. And let's add a capsule collider component and set the collider to its trigger. We'll also need to adjust the size of our collider to better match the size of our laser blast sprite. With that complete, let's now create and save a flow machine and macro, which we'll call Astor Galaxy Laser Blast Macro. Before we begin our graph, since we set our collider as a trigger, we'll also need to add a rigid body physics component. Once added, we'll uncheck Use Gravity and is kinematic, then set the constraints to freeze our X, Y, and Z axis. With that complete, we'll start by creating one scene graph float variable, which we'll call laser speed, and two object graph variables, which we'll call laser object, and the second will be a float, which we'll call destruction time. We'll begin our graph by using our start state to set our laser object variable, and for its value, we simply want to use self. Let's next use our update event and create a blendable move by. For our transform input, we'll simply get the transform from our laser object variable, and we'll set our duration to 1. For our value, let's use a vector3 create XY node, and for our Y value, we'll use our laser speed scene variable as well as a division node to divide our laser speed variable value to place higher, more manageable values for our laser speed when adjusting or choosing our laser speed value, and we'll place 10 for our division value. Before we continue, let's test our functionality so far. Let's change our laser speed from 0 to 5. And let's also disable our ship so we can solely focus on our laser. We can see that our laser is properly working. And if we increase our speed, we can see that our laser fires much faster as well. Lastly, we need to add the functionality for our laser blast to destroy itself if it's fired and doesn't hit an enemy. This way we can conserve our resources by not using objects that aren't viewable in our scene. To do this, we simply need to use a start event and a game object destroy node. We'll also need to make sure we use our game object destroy node that has the option to input a delay time before our object is destroyed. For our input object, we'll use our laser object variable. And for our input delay time, we'll use our destruction time variable. Let's place 1 into our destruction time, and let's test our functionality so far. We can see after 1 second our laser is no longer in our scene. Lastly, we want to create and assign a tag to our laser game object. With that complete, let's now create a prefab of our laser and then remove it from our scene. We also want to zero out the X, Y, and Z transform positions on our prefab. Let's now add the laser firing functionality to our ship sprite. To begin, we want to create a scene graph variable for our laser blast prefab. We'll make this variable a game object type, and then we'll place our laser blast prefab as its value. Let's next create an empty or 3D primitive game object, which we'll use as our laser spawning point. We also want to place it in the location that we want our laser blast to spawn from, and we want to make it a child of our spaceship. Let's next create an object graph variable, which we'll call laser spawn points. Before we begin our graph, let's first create and assign a tag to our laser spawn point game object. With that complete, let's go into our graph. To begin, we want to find and store our laser spawn point. Since we'll be using this same macro for both our base and upgraded ship, which can shoot multiple lasers, instead of assigning our variable value within our scene, we want to set that value within our graph. To do this, after we set our spaceship scene variable, we want to assign and store the objects with our laser spawn point tag. So we're going to use our find game objects with tag node, and the tag we want to use is our laser spawn point tag we just created. And we're going to use that to set our laser spawn point game object array. We next want to set up the functionality to spawn our laser. We'll place this functionality on a keyboard input. So we'll use our on keyboard input to invoke a for each loop node. This way, we can use a single node group to set the functionality for each of our spawn points. For our input, we'll use our laser spawn point variable. And for the body, we need to create a game object instantiate node. The object we wanted to instantiate is our scene variable laser blast prefab. For the position, we want to get the transform for the current item that's in our list. And for our rotation, we'll simply create a blank quaternion. However, if we rotated our prefab, then we need to use a get transform rotation node and input that as our rotation. With that complete, let's save our scene and test out our functionality. We can now see that we can fire a laser. And if we look within the object variables of our graph, we can see that it stored our laser spawn point in our game objects array variable. For the sake of example, let's create a few more spawn points just to make sure that our functionality is working correctly and it's able to spawn multiple lasers for each of our spawn points on our spaceship. We can see that it stored each of our spawn points and we're able to fire from multiple spawn points at once. Additionally, they're always fired from the location of our ship. With our basic laser blast in place, let's add our alternative firing laser beam.
Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to be the first to see this and many other tutorials, game development tips, and free game asset giveaways.